Hello, I'm Nicole Wilbur. Welcome back or welcome to my channel, and I am so excited today to be talking to you about live pitching agents at conferences. So I had my very first experience live pitching an agent virtually at a conference the weekend of June 7th, 8th, 9th in there. It was at the WriteHive conference, which I absolutely love. And although I am clearly not an expert on pitching agents, because that was my first time doing it, I am so excited to talk to you today about my experience, sort of how it got set up, what happened in the session, and then at the end, things that I think I did that were good, and maybe things that I would do next time. So my do's, don'ts, tips, tricks, but I don't want to call them that because I've only done it once. However, I will say that it was a successful pitch because the agent requested a partial from me. So pretty cool. So let's get right on into it. So last weekend was the WriteHive conference. It's a fairly small, I think, writers conference, and I love it. This is actually my second year going. Last year I went and I did a query critique with an agent, and actually eventually, so she was super nice. She gave us her email at the end and said, when it's ready, send it to me. And so that agent from WriteHive was actually my first ever partial request back in December. And I just got another partial request through WriteHive. And I also went to the WriteHive Light conference in the fall and got some great feedback on my opening pages. And that experience gave me the confidence to query at all. So I love WriteHive. It's a free conference. I didn't have to pay any money for this live pitch. I think I might have paid $15 or so last year for the query critique, but it is so affordable. It's amazing. I also really enjoy the time that you get with the agents. So the pitch was 15 minutes. And last year I did a critique with an agent. There were 3 or 4 of us in the critique group, and we all got like 10 minutes of her attention to go through her queries with us. So they only meet 10, 12 writers, each agent or editor, over the course of 2 to 3 days. So it's not super overwhelming like something like DV Pitch or Pitch Wars. So yes, highly recommend. Check out WriteHive. I think it is an amazingly kept secret because it's not like nobody goes. It's a known conference, but it's small enough that it feels like it's such a great community, honestly. It's all in Discord, which usually overwhelms me a lot, but they work with you and help you. Some of the pitches were like text only. Mine was on video. But if you are someone who is scared of doing like Zoom video, you could find a pitch or a critique that's in a text-only channel and have it be a little bit more suited to you. So now into the meat of it. What was my experience pitching like? Let me set the scene for you because Saturday was my little cousin's baby shower. She's having a beautiful baby boy in August, and we have had the build up to this baby shower going on for a while. So the other cousins came over to our house Friday night, and we got wine drunk and blew up balloons and did decorations. And then we were running around all morning picking up pizza and donuts and then making sangria and setting up the room and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it was my slot was at 3:20 p.m. So it was like 2.5 hours into the baby shower. I ended up dipping out and going to the car at like 10 to 3 to sit and prep. And I like had my phone up on the dashboard, like I didn't know where to go. And I had my laptop in my lap, so I had my notes with me, which was good, and I was just hotspotting myself. So that is the scene we're walking into. So I got on the call. It was a Zoom and it was on video. As I said, not all of their lives are on video. Some are audio only because they're in a Discord channel, or some will be written, but mine was Zoom video, which was great. And we said, hi, how are you? We exchanged pleasantries. I explained I was in a baby shower in my car. And then she was like, go for it. So I pitched my book. I debated how to do this for a really long time. And what I ended up doing was kind of following my query closely with a little bit more focus on vibes, if that makes sense. So we had 15 minutes together. So we had a bit of time. For a shorter pitch, you know, if you only have 10 minutes, if you only have 5 minutes, you're gonna do it a little bit differently. So, you know, I had my Google Doc up with all of my notes in it, much less I have right now. This is what it looked like. This is my setup. And I went through the elevator pitch, which is like my metadata first. So, you know, it's a YA contemporary heist thriller. I did my comps, which I think were The Italian Job meets I Kissed Shara Wheeler. And then I read an elevator pitch that I used in DV Pitch in the fall, which got a couple of likes from agents. And it's basically a Twitter pitch. It's like your short pitch. Where is it? Let me see if I have it. It was something to the effect of, oh, here it is. A risk-averse, rule-following musician, a flirty mastermind thief, a Tuscan villa full of wine and secrets, and 10 days to steal a legendary violin from a Medici palace, risking death, imprisonment, and music school admission. I think I might have left that second part out. Anyways, that's the rough version. I don't know if that's the final version, but that's basically what I read. And then I went into my actual plot paragraphs from my query, basically, which is, you know, name of the character, here's your ordinary world, here's your disruption, here's the conflict, the goals, motivation, stakes, that kind of thing. Once I'd done that, and I was really just reading it, I tried to read it with expression, and I tried to read it with expression. I'm not, like, it's really hard. Do you do your, like, announcer voice? And it's like, when she's caught and her freedom and future are at risk, she must decide. Or, but I didn't want it to be like, when she's caught and her freedom and future are at risk, which is a little bit more naturally what I would do. So, you know, I tried to put in some, like, hints of enthusiasm and stuff without going full on, like, narrator. Anyways, as I was reading it, she was jotting things down, pen and paper. And then sort of at the end, she was like, I'm writing down the word subplot. She said a couple things, and then she just asked me a lot of questions that I wasn't expecting. They weren't about the book. They were about me. Like, she asked me what I did if I wrote full time. And I was like, nope, I'm a product manager, but I'm also a digital nomad. And I explained how Florence was the first place that I digital nomaded and how that's where the story came from, and she thought that was really cool. So cool. She asked me if it was my first book. I said it was my third. She asked if I saw myself writing in this category, and I said yes. I really like, you know, action adventure. My current work in progress now, though, is more of a rom-com, and I will be honest, she looked concerned and a little taken aback. And then, like, through a minute of conversation, I clarified it was like a YA rom-com, and she was like, oh, and it made a lot more sense. We chatted a little bit more. She asked me to submit my first 50 pages, talked about how behind she was on partials and kind of like when she'd have a chance to read it. And then I started getting just like super excited and passionate, and I started just gushing about my book and the writing process and it being 2 years and something. I was like, the entire time I was talking, I was like, who are you? And I know in this video I'm coming across very bubbly because I am, but I usually don't talk about my book like that to other people in real life. I'm like, yeah, it's a YA heist thriller, we don't need to talk about it, because I find, you know, I get nervous about it. So I usually am like, ooh. But I was just like, Anna, I was like, I love this book and I'm so blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, who is this person? And can she calm down? And at that moment, my phone overheated and the call ended. It was okay. I like ran back into the baby shower. I ditched my heels. I found my dad. I was like, I need your hotspot. I got hotspotted onto my laptop in the baby shower room and like got back onto the Zoom call. It had ended. So then I checked out the WriteHive Discord and the moderator just said, hey, she really liked meeting you. Blah, blah, blah. So I don't think it was a big deal. We were almost at the end of our time anyways, but it was a little bit of a ending to the call. Oh yeah, the other thing she asked me about was if I'd queried it yet, what kind of response I'd gotten. And I wasn't quite sure how honest I was meant to be. Like, I would never lie, but like, do I give my stats? Like, I wasn't quite sure about that. So if anybody has any perspective, I did. I was like, yeah, I've sent like a very small number of queries and I've gotten a handful of requests, you know, no offers yet. I'm taking a moment now to do another revision. So I won't actually be sending her the partial until I'm finished this revision because it doesn't make sense to do that. Okay. And now we're on to part 3, where I will talk slower because I assume this is what people actually care about, which is what I would recommend / the advice I followed / kind of what I wish I did. Again, I'm not an expert. This was my first ever pitch to an agent. I did do some research, however. I watched some YouTube videos, read an article or two. There wasn't very much, I have to say. So hopefully this video can be a resource, and hopefully it's shorter, because a lot of those videos were like an hour long and nobody has time for that. I was like listening to it with the video down in the car while I was stuck in traffic, because I was like, when else am I gonna listen to this video? Anyways, tip number 1, read the agent's freaking MSWL, their manuscript wish list. You can find it online. Even if you're just doing like, you have an opportunity to do a critique or a query critique or first pages critique or something, don't go to an agent who doesn't represent like your category, because they won't have the kind of insights you need. Don't pitch them if what you have doesn't fit their MSWL. That's all I'm gonna say. But seriously, like, don't. Some conferences actually like required you, and this one did, WriteHive did, they required you to submit your query so they could check that it fit the agent's MSWL, because it could be like, otherwise it's a waste of their time, right? Okay. Tip number 2 is give vibes. And this might be my biggest tip. So give vibes and keep it brief. What she remembered of my pitch when I had finished, and she kind of like mumbled, sort of said to herself, and this was how she was framing it in her mind, right? She said, heist, Italy, music, some sapphic romance, awesome. Like, those are the vibes. Those are the things she remembers. She remembers 4 things about it. These things in conjunction together. People don't remember very many things. We can on a list of disparate items, we can remember up to 7 distinct things, but that's hard. Like, better is 3, medium-ish is 5. So we don't want to get into too many details here, because it actually would have muddled my pitch if I had gotten too off the rails into like the detail on the Australian member of the crew who's like kind of bitchy. You know what I mean? Like, those things, we need to stick to kind of like the core story. I also have heard some agents say before, like, just give the vibes. So that Tuscan villa full of wine and secrets, the like Medici Palace, like some of these things, you're just trying to give it atmospheric. And I think that can hook an interest because it gives an indication of the reading experience. However, as much as you need that, you also need to indicate the plot and the stakes. I've heard the formula goal, motivation, conflict, stakes as a good one to go through. My next tip is to prep beforehand. You can write out what you're going to say. I don't think agents mind if you read, as long as you like look up. I'm reading from my notes right now, but currently I am making eye contact with you. You can have notes, especially if you get nervous, you can read the notes. Next tip is practice and time yourself. So I had 15 minutes. My pitch was under 3 minutes. I had like the 30-second elevator pitch, and then I read the body plot paragraphs of my query, and that was about 90 seconds. If I had 5 minutes, I probably would have tried to cut that down a lot to be a minute to 90 seconds. And if it's even like smaller than that, you just do your 30-second elevator pitch, which is like basically your vibes. And anyways, that time that I had to chat with the agent, the other like 10 minutes of my call, it was really great. And I think, especially if they have questions or things to clarify, it can be super important. So if I'd used my full time talking about the book, A, she wouldn't have remembered anything, and B, we wouldn't have had time to talk through things. And it was really valuable to hear her kind of say, like, you know, it's a thriller, but a heist is kind of a different kind of thriller. That's really interesting. To hear her say, you know, like, this is my timeline on my partial request process, to have a chance to actually chat, I think was really good. Even to be like, oh, this is a little bit about me, I'm this digital nomad, and to have her now go and remember that, I think was pretty good. I've heard this advice. I actually did get a chance to briefly pitch my current work in progress. So have your other stuff ready to pitch. especially if they don't like what you pitch first. If you have previous projects, something you're working on now, I think it's okay to say, well, I'm working on X thing, and sort of change the conversation. You don't want to seem all over the place, but you know, like 10, 20-second pitch for your other projects. I had one for my rom-com. It was basically, I was just like, yeah, it's X meets Y. But I wish I had pitches ready for my other thrillery ideas, because she was clearly looking for more in that action adventure space, which I have, but I just didn't have it written out yet. And so I kind of wish I'd had those that were related, so I could kind of really show like I want to establish in this niche. Next one is prep questions for them. She was like very chatty, so there wasn't any silence, but I felt like if my phone hadn't died, there might have been a second of silence and I could have asked a couple of questions. I've heard other agents say this as well, like if they talk really fast, like if your pitch is super clear and then there's nothing to do, like you want to use that time best you can. So even things like, what are like some, you know, books you've read recently that you want the next of? Or could you tell me a little bit about, you know, how you look at planning an author's career? How many agents or how many authors do you work with at a time? Like any kind of question just to fill silence, because you don't want to seem uninterested or unpersonable. And I know how nerve-wracking it can be when you're with an agent and you're there and you're like, mind question, and it's helpful to have them written down. Next one is know your word count, your genre, and your comps. I didn't say my word count in my elevator pitch. It was the first thing she asked. It was the thing she asked everybody for their genre and their word count. I also think, and this is just me and my non-expert opinion, but leaning into some of those more recognizable media comps like movies and TV shows is almost better, especially for a shorter pitch, because it's more memorable and you want them to get into it immediately. And so I think there are two different kinds of like comps of X meets Y. It's the, we want you to understand this in a snap, what this book is, and then there's like selling numbers. So in my query, I don't use the Italian job in my query. I use 3 YA books because I think I can give a sense of what the story is and actual comps for like volumes and selling and market potential together. I also will say like with the X from this comp. Whereas in the short pitch, I want them to understand it as fast as humanly possible. So that's why I use the Italian job, because it gets across heist, Italy. And I kissed Shara Wheeler because it gets across like adventure, sapphic. And it's fun. Next tip, don't say you're nervous or that it's your first time. Even if you are going completely off the rails and rambling, maybe just stop talking. That's what I wish I did. I didn't say I was nervous. I didn't say it was my first time. But you want to come off as professional, right? It's a job interview. They're not your therapist. They're your agent, and you want to inspire confidence. I don't think it's bad if you say it, but you know, you want to be more confident than that. You can do it. Next one is always be gracious. So it's very possible that an agent could be like, listen, that doesn't sound like it's for me. I think that would be a hard thing to say in that kind of conversation. I don't think you should also go into it thinking that they're gonna ask you for a partial. Maybe this agent requested from everybody that she saw, all 5, 6 of us. Or maybe she didn't, who knows? But no matter what happens, like be gracious, and even if they're not interested in what you're selling, use the time with your questions to sort of pick their brain. Be like, yeah, I totally understand. Could you tell me about, how you got into agenting? Like anything just to still use the opportunity, even if it's not a fit. And then finally, don't prop your phone up in a hot car window on a June warm day. What a tip, because your phone will overheat and then you will be very sad. And those are my tips. So let me know, have you ever pitched an agent live at a conference? How did it go? How do you feel about live pitching? What do you think of these tips? I would love to hear about your experiences. If you have advice, do's, don'ts, all that kind of thing, let's chat in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.